Hey folks, this is Rhykker, and we just found out how Season 9 plans to change the future of Diablo 4. After a massive campfire chat, 2 hours, we learned about the season theme of Season 9, Sins of the Horadrim, the permanent additions to the game in the form of the reveal of what dungeon escalation was, which was teased in the roadmap, as well as some balance changes and more. And I think it's fair to say that this is going to be the biggest season yet. But whether that means that you'll like it or not, well, you'll have to have a listen. We'll cover all that in this video. Be sure to subscribe and ring that bell to be notified when new videos go live. But before we dive in further, first a quick word from this video's sponsor, Theorycraft, the developers of Supervive. Supervive is a chaotic, fast-paced blend of MOBA, Battle Royale, and hero shooter. But it's not just another genre mashup, it's built by a dream team of devs formerly from Riot, Bungie, and Blizzard. The guy running Theorycraft used to run League of Legends and Teamfight Tactics, so yeah, they know what they're doing in this space. You start by picking your hunter, then you and your 3-man squad drop into a giant battlefield, and then chaos ensues, as you're pitted against 11 other teams to be the sole survivors. You farm creeps for gold, you level up your powers, you buy and upgrade gear. There's a lot in here that's very familiar to MOBA players, but it's all wrapped in a Battle Royale container. The shrinking map, the huge sprawling map with a lot to discover. It's genuinely fun. You're seeing my gameplay right here. I'm playing a support, I'm healing my teammates, rooting our enemies, and still racking up the kills. There's also an arena mode. It's a 4v4 deathmatch mode if you just want more pure fighting. The game's in open beta right now, and they're updating it monthly with new content, but the real hype is Supervive 1.0 officially launching this summer. So if you want a head start, like if you want to actually learn the game, and get good before everyone jumps in on it, and you can then stomp some noobs, this is the time. Download Supervive using my link below, or scan the QR code on screen and enter my creator code Rhykker to unlock Rudy the Carrot as your Wisp. That's basically your spirit when you're downed and you're waiting to be brought back into the fight. Try this game out with your friends. It's free on Steam. You got nothing to lose here. And if you like high skill, high mobility games that actually feel good to play, I think you'll be hooked. All right, the campfire chat started off by talking a little bit about Season 8. They said that they are happy with the pacing of the game. Now the progression, that is, leveling and gearing up. I'm glad to hear that they're not going to futz with it anymore, because I like, personally, how things are right now. But the new pace made them realize that, especially in Season 8, while leveling to 60, there just wasn't enough variety in things to do, especially since the season felt like it was pushing you towards doing the incursions. Overall, they want people to be engaging with more and diverse activities. They feel that having activity variety is fun, and so they're going to be looking at rebalancing things to encourage different activities, as well as, I guess kind of spoiler, adding new things to do. They also said that in terms of meta, in terms of what builds are viable, they actually kind of like where things are right now. They feel that there's a greater variety of builds that could engage with all the content than there really has ever been. We don't have like these two super powerful outlier builds. And what they strive for in balance is ensuring that every class has multiple builds that are Torment 4 capable, i.e. that they can do all the content in the game. They're not going to be the best, right? Not necessarily going to be the have the most efficient run, but just in general, they want to ensure that kind of whatever, skill that you pick, you can build around that, and you can do all the content in the game with it. That's their end game goal. They feel that this season has gone closest to that so far. They're still trying to strive towards that. I very much like this philosophy. I'm very much of the opinion that yes, you should be able to pick any build as in any kind of core skill. I look at the core skills as the game telling us, this is something that should be viable. If I want to build around Barrage, I should be able to, if I'm able to find all the right combinations of gear and Paragon boards and whatever, I should be able to make a build that can do all the content in the game. And if I cannot, if it's not possible, then that needs to be buffed. And so it seems like we're philosophically aligned there. Great to hear. They also acknowledged that overpower is overpowered. Pretty much all the best builds in the game revolve around stacking overpower and overpowering. So going forward, they're actually planning to nerf overpower by about 80%. They're going to change some of the math on how it works. It's a bit of a complicated stat. It scales off of your life and your fortify. They're going to be doing a change to the additive damage calculation there. Again, the net result is going to be overpower being brought down in power by about 80%. They don't want to kill overpower, but they want to make non-overpower builds competitive. They also acknowledge that the meta did not get shaken up enough in this season that many of the top builds from Season 7 are still the top builds this season. And it sounds like going forward, they do want to try to shake up that meta more. If I remember correctly, my top 10 builds of Season 8, I think half of them are the same top 10 builds from Season 7. And I actually want to ask you folks, how do you feel about that? Do you want the top 10 builds to be different every season? Or, do you find a build that you like, it's a top build, and you want it to keep being a top build every season? Sound off in the comments about that. All right, next they spoke about the PTR for Season 9 for patch 2.3.0. PTR will start May 7th, run until June 3rd. 1 week PTR starting next Tuesday. So first, let's talk about the new seasonal powers, the Horadric powers. We've had the meme over and over again about it's just powers, copy, paste, copy, paste, copy, paste. And at first impression, we are getting powers, copy, paste. A very, very, very familiar interface at this point with a very familiar layout. It's actually more different than it initially appears. These are called Horadric spells, and it's sort of a create a power system. So how does it work? It all starts off with the core of the Horadric spell, which is called a catalyst. It sounds like there's going to be 5 different catalysts, and a catalyst is going to be assigned to a skill on your skill bar of your choice. So you assign it to a skill bar slot, and then when you activate whatever skill is in that slot, let's say you're a barbarian and you have it on Warcry, then whenever you pop Warcry, you're going to cast the Horadric spell. Now, these catalysts have cooldowns, so it's only going to cast if it's off cooldown itself. As you level it up, you reduce its cooldown. It sounds like each of these does some kind of big unique effect. It's not just damage, they're all very visible. One of them is like holy meteors coming from above. Another summons these holy pets, I guess. I do think overall there's like a holy theme to it, because they just love teasing us about the paladin. So right off the bat, these powers seem cool and impactful from a visual perspective. I thought the powers from Season 8 were the best powers. You had the boss powers, some of them very, very, very cool. A lot of them very, very cool. Right now, it does seem like we're getting many fewer of these base powers, at least, right? We only have 5. We will be able to modify them in many ways as we're going to get there, but overall, again, it seems like a reduction in variety, and perhaps maybe they won't be quite as cool. We'll have to see if they're as cool, cooler, or less cool than the boss powers. Now let's talk about the ways you get to customize your spell. The first way is with an infusion. You're going to assign 1 infusion to your spell, and this seems like a certain element that you can flavor it to. These change the elemental type of the spell, and it really makes the elements matter, and I really like that. It's not just a cosmetic change, it doesn't just do burning damage, it kind of like, it encapsulates what do you feel this element ought to do, and it kind of does that. So if you use the fire infusion, for instance, that's actually going to, in addition to do a burning effect, in addition to leaving a burning puddle on the ground, in addition to transforming the entire elemental damage type to fire, it's also going to burn down enemy structures. So like when a waller puts up walls, it'll burn down the waller walls, and it'll also negate chilling effects from enemies. So again, you have your base spell, you have the infusion that flavors its element, and then you can add 3 arcanas to the spell. Every arcana is just a little modifier, but these 3 together really help tailor the spell to your particular build and playstyle. So for instance, 1 arcana might increase the size of the spell effect. Another might grant you unstoppable when you pop the spell. Another might destroy enemy barriers and knock them down. And of course, there are progression systems built in where you're leveling up all of the things that we've been talking about, it seems, or some of them, some part of them at least. You unlock additional powers and rank ups and everything. Now, in addition to these normal arcana, right, those modifiers that you can slot 3 in, there are 5 legendary arcana that you can find, and these aren't intended to just be more powerful. They're really intended to be situationally useful. And what's special about these is that every legendary arcana does something different for every catalyst. So arcana normally, right, it's like 20% bonus radius to the spell effect, right? And it doesn't matter what catalyst you attach that to. Whereas a legendary arcana, it will do something different for every of the 5 catalysts. So that's 25 combinations. There's 5 legendary arcana, 5 catalysts, 25 different possible things that they can do. So all of this taken together I do now think this is the best power system that we have. I know, again, we meme about it's copy-paste of powers over and over. Every season is temporary powers. Of the temporary powers, I think this system is the most robust, the most ability to customize it and level it up and tweak and change things in different ways. Now, additionally, we're getting Horadric Jewels. These are going to be similar to the Occult Gems from Season 7. In fact, it is copy-paste, but reworked and improved. And they won't be as expensive to make as the Occult Gems. Again, these Horadric Jewels will be pretty similar to the Occult Gems. They're going to give you all-resistant armor, but they're going to be a bit more customized to the Horadric spells and buffing those Horadric spells. And you're going to craft them using gem fragments and the seasonal currency. Also, they're finally giving us a Bane of the Stricken butt. And I don't know that I like this. Okay, Bane of the Stricken in Diablo 3 was a necessary legendary gem used in pretty much every build that would push the pit. Diablo 3's version of the pit. And what it did was, the more you attack a single target, you gain an accelerating damage buff against that target. It used to take like 5 minutes plus to kill the Rift Guardian, or the boss at the end of a pit. It would just take so long to kill that one guy. Once they added the Bane of the Stricken, that really cuts down on that time to, half of that or less. D4 doesn't have any mechanic like that until we are now getting the Tyrant's Bane Horadric Jewel. So again, I'm glad, because it's going to really help against, single targets, but it is only applicable to damage over time builds. And that is my concern. It is only when you apply a dot do you gain that damage buff. So now I'm wondering, okay, does that mean that all pit pushing builds are going to become dot based, or otherwise find ways to work dots into their setup in order to benefit from this bonus? At the end of the day, I don't know. We'll find out next week, but that is a concern of mine. And I'll state, folks, that if you want to look through all the patch notes, they are available on Diablo4.com. All right, now let's talk about the new content to play. So the powers are seasonal only. The Occult Gem seasonal only, but these activities are permanent additions to the game. First, we have Strong Rooms, or Horadric Strong Rooms. These are going to be micro dungeons that you run into. They're going to be hidden within Nightmare Dungeons. When you enter the Stronghold, your goal is to collect a bunch of Horadric attunement by killing enemies. So there's some echoes of the Gauntlet. I don't know if you folks remember the Gauntlet system that was in the game for some time before being removed. That's where the leaderboards were attached to. Your goal is to maximize your attunement. It's also kind of similar to the Undercity. But anyway, your goal is to maximize your attunement, because attunement is going to improve the chest earned at the end of the Strong Room, which you get after defeating a mini-boss. There's apparently different gizmos, they call them, to interact with. And interacting with them in the right way is going to help you maximize your attunement. There's also a handful of different tests that you can interact with at the start of a strong room that will then affect how that strong room plays out. It sounds like there's a whole lot of mechanics behind this. We didn't really get many details, but preliminary thoughts are this is a cool system. This is something different. It almost feels like it's a miniature combination of a Undercity and an Infernal Hordes. I'm very optimistic for this, and we'll find out next week. Then we have the Escalating Nightmares. An Escalating Nightmare is a special kind of nightmare dungeon. Now, sometimes in a strong room, you're going to find an Escalating Nightmare Sigil. These give you access to special nightmare dungeons, which are the Escalating Nightmares. And basically what these are nightmare dungeons where at the end you're going to find a doodad to interact with that opens a portal to another nightmare dungeon that is going to be more challenging. And you can keep chaining those. You're going to be fighting through a series of nightmare dungeons. We don't know how many exactly. And the escalation is that every subsequent nightmare dungeon gets more and more affixes stacked on it. It inherits the affixes you already had and adds more. We're also seeing a complete update to the affixes, by the way. Positive affixes are being added, reworked tremendously. We basically just have currently the Greed Shrine and the XP affixes. Well, we're getting new beneficial affixes. They're adding a bunch of new positive affixes that have varying rarities. and they're reworking the negative affixes to avoid penalizing specific elements or specific builds. And an escalating nightmare culminates with a new boss fight, a reworked Astaroth from the campaign. So overall, I'm liking what I'm hearing about this system. This is a lot of love to Nightmare Dungeons. Nightmare Dungeons currently are something that I almost never interact with. These new escalating dungeons, if the reward is right, yeah, that sounds like something that can be fun to engage with. I will say this still does not address the thing I keep bringing up, which is meta progression. And I'm actually working on a video, folks. I'm hoping to publish it next week. I'm going to clearly lay out what I mean by meta progression, and I'm going to present a mock-up of a meta progression system and what that could look like in Diablo 4, so stay tuned for that video. Now, the devs then spent a good chunk of time talking about class balance changes. We're not going to get into the nitty-gritty of it all. Again, there's patch notes if you want to see it. In general, anything that is really strong is getting nerfed, and they're trying to promote greater variety. They don't want to outright destroy whatever's really strong, but, you know, anything that's an outlier, they're trying to bring down. They're trying to promote greater diversity. If anything is used in like every, you know, sorcerer build, they're going to look to bring that down, maybe buff things to compensate. They're also doing some rebalancing of damage affixes on gear. So we were talking about the overpower nerfs, right? Well, what they want is whether you want to do an overpower, a vulnerable, a crit, a minion build, whatever it is, whatever damage type you want to stack in different slots, that these are all viable. That it's not just, well, I can stack more overpower damage than anything else, so let me go overpower. So we're going to see numbers change actually on gearing. We're also seeing across the board massive buffs to basic skills for all classes. Each of them's going to be doing double to triple damage now. They don't, however, want to see basic attack builds just dominate the endgame meta, so any of those items that are giving a lot of love to basic skills are probably going to be dialed down quite a bit. They do want basic skill builds to be viable in the endgame. They just, you know, there's certain items right now that tie that with a tripling of the damage of a basic skill, and, well, Season 9 would be just basic skills. They're changing our baseline max resistance. Currently, your default max resistance is 70. They're upping that to 75. The max resist remains 85. They're also nerfing some of the items that give too much resistance, that basically solve the resistance puzzle too easily. So we're raising the resist cap, but we're making it harder to reach. They've also done a pass on key passives. They've looked for key passives that are dominating, bringing those down, looking for ones that aren't used enough, bringing them up. Again, they just want more parity of choice between them. To just touch upon every class, Barbarian, yeah, Earthquake's getting some nerfs to it. Druid, Cataclysm nerf, Necromancer, Soul Rift, Bloodwave, Rogue, Death Trap, everything that you expect, right? Sorcerer, Lightning Spear. But overall, these nerfs are being handled with a gentle hand to not outright kill anything, and even sometimes they might nerf one part of the build but buff another. So if we're talking about Lightning Spear, for instance, they're actually buffing Lightning Spear, the skill, but they're heavily nerfing the splintering energy aspect, which is a real culprit here. They acknowledge that the Lightning Spear build was basically on the cusp of being too powerful compared to all other of the powerful builds in the game, which is exactly how I felt. And every class is getting uniques that are going to support new builds. They're really trying to bring new builds into the meta. Barbarian's getting a basic attack unique that makes all your basic attacks cleave and deal more damage. Druids are going to be dealing poison puddles via Pulverize. Rogues get a new Flurry unique that makes it that when you're out of energy, you spend your life to channel Flurry, and that makes you do more damage and increases your attack speed. Sorcerer's getting a new unique related to Hydra. Your Hydra can no longer have more than 3 heads. It has 3 by default, and anytime you were to get another head, instead, the Hydra gets bigger and deals more damage. So it just keeps growing bigger and bigger. Altogether, lots of class changes, too many to discuss. But I like where their head's at with class balance and what they seek to achieve, so positive vibes there. Then they spoke about some miscellaneous type stuff, so you know how in Season 8 that we're in right now, killing elites, killing bosses, doing the lair bosses, all of that rewarded seasonal reputation. They actually like that. They're going to keep that as a permanent thing, that no matter what season, doing these things will give you seasonal rep. An update to ancient item drops. Now, the higher in Torment you go, the more likely you are to get better loot. So it used to be that higher Torment just gave more loot. Now higher Torment gives better loot, as in ancestrals and possibly even multi-tier ancestrals. So I think your odds of getting a 4-star ancestral are highest on Torment 4 now, but they're not making the change so drastic that you feel compelled to play on Torment 4 and nothing else. They're planning to increase the legendary rune drop rate. They agree, yeah, it's not high enough right now. They're going to increase the rune drops from Tributes of Harmony. They're going to make sure every Undercity now drops at least one rune. They're going to give an increase to Whisper cache resources. Jewelry cache costs are going to be reduced. Those were too high. You're going to get increased gems from Infernal Hordes. All great changes that we're kind of feeling the pain of in this current season. But they are not making any further changes, balance-wise at least, to the current season. PTR Boost will be available. It sounds like it's going to be available possibly from the start this time. Normally they wait a couple days. During the Q&A section at the end, they addressed reliquaries. They said, quote, "We have heard your overwhelming feedback." What's going to come of that, I don't know. They kind of just suggested that they're looking to bring some more things into the reliquary to give value. We'll see. They also teased that a new reliquary based on an event reliquary, that is right around the corner. And they also said, given that there's another IP collab coming up in the future, they want to take feedback from the Berserk collab and apply that to the next collab. I spoke a lot in my previous video about what I think an ideal IP collab would look like. On the topic of tempering and masterworking, they suggested that there's a lot of internal discussions here, nothing to really share, but that at least in patch 2.2.2, which is still coming out actually, they are planning to retune the amount of non-obdicite and non-gold materials needed to masterwork, because they were finding that players were reaching kind of a shocking bottleneck where it's not about gold, it's not about obdicite, it's the basic materials that they were running out of. So that's everything, folks. For me, personally, the thing that's most exciting for me is the permanent additions vis-a-vis the Nightmare Dungeons. I'm hoping that system is going to work well, and I think it actually would work really well combined into a meta progression system, which I'll be talking about more next week. I do think this feels like the biggest season yet. I know there is still going to be some disappointment about its more powers again, but I turn the question to you folks. So far, does this season seem like a winner? Sound off in the comments. And we'll end by once again thanking our video sponsor here and remind you folks, check out Super Vibe. Again, free to play on Steam. Use my code to get some goodies. Fun game. In fact, it would have been cool to have some kind of PvP mode in Diablo 4 that was like this. Thanks for watching. Special thanks to my supporters for making these videos possible. If you enjoyed this video, give it a thumbs up and subscribe to join Rhykkers Raiders for more Diablo content.